Sumbul.
Happy to be here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for, yeah, thank you. That's great. And one of the things that the mayor does is the mayor brings the city together, and along with the city managers. I think the mayor is the only councilor who has a specific responsibility to do that. But we're trying to break things down to our neighborhood, and I know I ran into you knocking on doors in mid-Cambridge, so you're familiar with our neighborhood. So I think it's okay to ask you questions about our neighborhood. I hope and how what your policies would affect that. And one of them is really something that we just talked with Jeevan about, is the role of neighborhood associations in making policies and changes that affect neighborhoods in different ways. One of those ways is through building bicycle infrastructure. And how did the city do a good? You feel the city could do a better job, or does a good job of reaching out to neighborhood associations on major changes that really go through the heart of a neighborhood, like where there are many changes that affect people's lives?
Yeah, I can start with that. I think now, having served almost 4 years, and especially during the last 2 years, I've learned a lot about process, particularly, as chair of the school committee, and what's enough process, what isn't enough process. And I do think that the city does an okay job, but I think we can do a better job in many cases. I've seen that some folks, don't even know that there's a project happening, right? Maybe they've gotten something in the mail, but there hasn't been those points of contact. And I think usually you need several points of contact to kind of, figure out that something is going to be happening. And so bringing it back to bike lanes and and whenever the city's done something, I think there's a lot of lessons learned. I think with respect to some of the more recent examples, I do think they should have done a better job. And I think many of us, when we got those emails, around Ellery Street and so forth, we said, wait, what happened here, right? Walk me through the process. And sometimes people do make mistakes, and sometimes, things need to be relooked at. There needs to be another meeting. There needs to be more conversation. And so I think usually that comes from, residents too, and coming to council and saying, hey, this happened. And unfortunately, I wish that wasn't always the case, but sometimes that's the reality. I think it's in this environment when there's just so much work and so many projects happening, there's going to be some learning on process.
Thank you. Okay, that's so you hear from residents when things don't work, and so but it shouldn't have to come to that. It's better for it to work before it gets to city council. The city council, I think, winds up being in effect the traffic board, providing oversight to the traffic department. This traffic department is unique in departments that affect the neighborhoods, is that there isn't a board or a commission that has any oversight of it. So it's the council. Next question is about housing, and as in addressing the housing crisis, ABC is advocating for this position that everybody who wants to live in Cambridge should be able to, which would mean building a lot of housing. We're in mid-Cambridge. We think we're pretty dense as it is, and we think we're kind of in the sweet spot. We're near transit. We're a pretty dense neighborhood. We've fought to keep the quality of life stable and not have too much development. Do you think that do you see a possibility of more development in mid-Cambridge? And what about the regulations that are keeping things stable through zoning and our conservation district commission? Do you think they're about right, or do you think they need to be changed?
So I'll start with, the need for more housing. I think as general, I grew up in affordable housing. So I think generally It's a really important value, and I think we need more of it. If you look at the Envision report, it talks about this balanced approach to development, and you're looking at locations and districts where change could have the most positive impact, and at the same time preserving neighborhoods that have stable patterns of development. And I think there's buckets, right? There's the residential neighborhoods like mid-Cambridge. There's the squares and the major mixed use corridors along Mass Ave and Cambridge Street, that are really close to transit. And there's a lot of other like transition areas that I think, I live near one that I think can accommodate more development of varying types. And I won't go into the mixed use districts and so forth, where I think really based on trends, we're going to see the bulk of our city's growth, and a lot of new development, particularly housing development, is happening in those mixed use districts. And so,
could you explain where those are, please?
Sure.
Our viewers.
So, yeah, sure. So the evolving mixed use districts: Kendall Square, North Point, Cambridge Crossing, and Alewife. So that really, those areas, that's where we're seeing the bulk of the city's growth and change. And on the one hand, it's really, the transit is right there. And there's a lot of surface parking lots. There's some obsolete commercial buildings in those areas. So I think some of those areas are the right place. And Alewife, for, where the zoning is being worked on after that planning study. So there's going to be a lot of development there. I think of other parts in the city, there's these transition areas that I just mentioned. I live on Sydney Street and Cambridgeport area. There's these single story commercial developments, and there's like this surface parking lots. And when I look at these areas, I'm like, I think these pose a challenge for development, but also there's a redevelopment opportunity in these areas because they serve a high need for housing and commercial space. And so I really envision in the next many years, we're going to probably see really take advantage of more of these transition areas. And frankly, I don't see much of that in mid-Cambridge. But I do think that, going back to your, can we have more housing? I think residential areas, we're probably honestly going to be seeing probably low growth there. We'll see neighborhoods on retaining their existing fabric, while I think there's this notion of some complementary infill development that can exist with our broader city goals. And I think from what I've pointed out, I think we're going to see more development along the major commercial corridors and so forth. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you. We are out of time. So unfortunately, we have to stop. We have to stop. So that's good of you. That's good of you. No, this was very interesting. It was a pleasure, and I wish you a pleasant evening.
Take care.
Thank you for joining. Yeah. I understand that our final speaker, Greg Morey, has not joined us, so I think I'm going to